enough seen. I am Larysa Soltykevych, and as a member of the Gallery Committee at ACUA, Alberta Council for the Ukrainian Arts, it is my pleasure to introduce the next Signature Artist Series exhibition for the month of May 2021. Entitled Brief Encounters or КОРОТКІ ЗУСТРІЧІ, it features the photography of Vitalyi Bulychev and Larysa Luciw. Larysa Luciw is an Edmonton-based elementary school teacher and also a photographer in her spare time. On a whim, she bought a camera one day, and that is when her photography journey began. It started with taking photos of old abandoned buildings around East Central Alberta. Then it became a part-time job taking photos of families, fine art portraits, newborn photography. Larysa finds beauty around her. She always has a camera handy to capture images of things she sees around her. This series of images have all been captured during normal life activities. While on a walk in the river valley is where she spotted the owlet sitting in the spruce. Driving down a country road is where she captured the barn and fence image. In her mother's garden is where the crocus was photographed as the sun was setting, and Baba's garden are where the poppies were planted. The little sparrow was an image that was taken outside her home. This image of the sparrow was taken outside. However, the sparrow was perched on a branch with her neighbor's window behind, providing a dark backdrop. This took a little patience. Sometimes the most beautiful things are those right in front of you. Larysa does have a Facebook and Instagram page called Larysa Luciw Photography, if you are interested in seeing more of her work. Vitalyi Bulychev's work is comprised of documentary photography shot with 35mm black and white, as well as color film stocks. His photographs are organized around city and countryside themes, depicting rural scenes in the Kosiv Rayon or region, and Mount Dragobrat in the Carpathian Mountains. The city scenes are taken from Chernivtsi, Ivano-Frankivsk, Lviv, and Kyiv. His work reflects his relationship with Ukraine, the country he was born in but now experiences only as a visitor. The exhibition also includes a video installation from Vitalyi entitled Kladka, a portion of work-in-progress documentary film Lehendy Sela Tue-Thu, Legends from the village of Tue-Thu. It is multiple takes of villagers crossing a river via a wooden bridge. These images are set to an audio narration of a Hutzul fable about the origins of the mountains. Brief encounters may be enjoyed until May 28, 2021 at the ACUA Gallery.
Welcome, Vitalyi. Vitalyi is a photographer slash filmmaker who is based in Montreal, and he has graciously brought his artwork to ACUA so that we can show it here in Edmonton. A lot of his work has to do with documenting trips to Ukraine and sort of navigating a relationship with the homeland in the light of now living in the diaspora and having sort of an arm's length away from Ukraine. So first, Vitalyi, I just wanted to ask you to maybe just let us know in your own words what you do and how you got into it, how long you've been doing it, and just tell us about your practice in general.
Sure, thanks. So first of all, I just want to say thanks to ACUA, or ACUA as you say, for including my work in the programming. It's amazing, and thanks to you for all the logistical and hard work, all the work that goes into putting on an exhibit. It's amazing. I really like what it looks like. The space looks great. And I really wish I could have visited. It was like a big kind of hope for me to go to Edmonton. I've never been there, and it would have been a great occasion to go for sure. Yeah, so I am, I am originally from Ukraine. I moved to Canada when I was a kid. I'm from Ivano-Frankivsk. And it's I guess these photos in the exhibit are not a reflection, but some kind of, I guess it is a reflection or some kind of a reflex of this sort of strange duality of living here, fully identifying and thinking of myself as a Canadian, but also having this kind of bifurcated or separate identity that is totally linked to this place I'm from and where majority of my family lives. And that's been the reality for all my life. And you can't really, anyway, it's a, I don't know, it's a hard, I guess, not a hard thing, but it's an interesting way of interacting. Or in terms of like my practice, I came to study to Montreal at Concordia University, Mel Hoppenheim School of Cinema, where I did film production and kind of stayed here. And I think like basically like my practice sort of started after the school and just being part of an artist collective and doing installations and some photography and short films, and sort of gradually, slowly putting together a practice that is, you know, this like image-based practice and with a focus of photography and filmmaking. Over time, I just, it really just came as a realization basically last year that I just have this body of work that is super focused on the place I'm from. And these, it's mostly specifically areas where I'm from, where I grew up. I mean, when I go to Ukraine, I just usually visit there, so.
So all the photos and the footage in the exhibition, when was that taken?
This was taken over 4 trips. All the photos are actually taken from one trip in 2016. And it's just, I guess like what I've realized is I have like basically too much photos from all the visits. So I kind of limited this show to this trip I made in 2016. The video is from from 2 years ago, 2018. Now, I guess now it's 3 years ago.
Was there any areas that have drastically changed?
Yeah, it's strange. So like on a personal level, it's strange for me to visit because like my father's, he stayed in Ukraine, he lived there, and he's lived in the same apartment, you know, the apartment I grew up in that when I was a kid. And whereas like in Canada, I have moved, like I lived in Toronto and moved maybe like a dozen times when I lived there. And since I've come to Montreal, you know, you're just constantly moving places. And so in this weird way, this place I have in Ukraine is just kind of static. Meanwhile, of course, the country's changing like crazy. You can't keep up. And everything changes. The spaces change, the buildings change, the language changes, the references change. So it's kind of like every time you go, you're so out of place. But it's super fascinating. The show in particular right now that we have, this was limited to like 3 places mostly. This kind of mountain range or mountain Drahobrat, Tue-Thu, which is a small town just before the Carpathian Mountains start. And I think there's a few photos from Ivano-Frankivsk. But in relation to the show, like, what can I say? It's really, it's just like sort of, I guess, where I go, and I just kind of start taking photos wherever I'm at, and I'm not sure. Well, I mean, I know specifically why I'm doing it. It's like, I don't know if you've noticed, but all the photos are basically like horizontal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's only one that's
vertical. And that one that's vertical, it just made no sense. I wanted to take it horizontally also, but it just made no sense. And I think the reason for that is basically like, I'm always looking for an image that is like somehow in my mind correlates to some kind of a sequence in a film, or there's like a scene or whatever, and something just grabs me and I just want to, I think, to almost like store it away for later potential, or just, and this is what's constantly driving me. Like, this is why I'm kind of, and that's what I do here. And that's what I do when I mean, I'm just constantly basically doing like street photography style of, you know, photographing. But when I'm in Ukraine, it kind of, multiplies into all sorts of different levels of like how I relate to the place and what's happening. And it's just the kind of unbelievable level of kitsch that you have in Ukraine is so special and specific. So yeah, it's endlessly fascinating and interesting to document there and be like, and just, yeah, it's unbelievable.
We were talking about that, the one photo that's vertical in the exhibition. I think it's called Sunbather. Is that right?
Yeah. I think it's my favorite photo from that whole series. Before we do that, I just want to also reference the video installation, because that's very much like, I wasn't sure what's happening or why, but this is like, it was something that I wanted to capture and document. So basically it's like it's a wooden sort of man-made bridge over a river, right? And it connects two shores, two villages basically. And my mother's family is from one of those villages, and I just spent all my summers there and stuff like that. So when I was there last, I just had this kind of feeling that I really wanted to make some kind of a documentary in the future. So I started just capturing stuff from the village and taking lots of photos, but none of those photos made it to the show. But I just started doing this video thing because like people were crossing the bridge, and I don't know, it's just whatever. I didn't have any kind of specific thought or anything for it. And I'm really happy with how it kind of turned out. And I'm using that footage and that material for developing a documentary project there. And I should say that the text is super specific there, and I didn't Тіні забутих предків. And what's interesting about him is that, well, first of all, it was that story was transformed into like an incredible film by Parajanov. But what's interesting about Kotzybinski was that he was coming to this area and he was collecting a lot of folklore stories. And he was, I guess that was his interest. And one of those stories made it into this story in this collection. And he's sort of talking about the origins of the mountains. And so that's where that text comes from. And the film Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors was shot like 7 kilometers away from this area, or like 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so you'll run into people who'll be like, oh yeah, I was in that film. And you're just like,
wow.
Yeah.
It's a very weird level of celebrity.
Yeah. And
pretty wild film.
There's that link to, I don't know if it's a link, but I just wanted to include that sort of narrative. It's not a narrative, it's like a folktale. It's not even a folktale. It's some kind of a foundation myth that is so, I don't know, I just think it's so fascinating. It's just the way it treats the idea of devil and good and evil and all of that. It's just, it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, Draho Brat. What's interesting to me about this, and this is like the kind of this idea of this fantastic kitsch that you have. I'm not sure why there's a cross at this peak. I mean, we're at the elevation of like 1,800 meters.
Wow.
And there's no one around there really. It's not like you can just park your car and go for a hike. It's like people that hike here are there for a day trip. From this, like if you're looking in the distance, you can kind of point to different countries too. Like there's, one mountain is Romania, another one is Hungary. It's like, it's this place where, I'm not sure if it's Hungary actually, but Romania for sure. So it's like, I don't know, it just feels like everything's very remote. And what's interesting about this cross to me is that whoever brought it here obviously brought it for some kind of ceremonial, religious. I mean, it makes sense. The nature there is so gorgeous. It is like such a contemplative place. But the body of Christ is gone. You just have the hands, if you see the hands and feet.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, the body's gone missing. And I was fascinated by this kind of show of reverence and irreverence at the same time. And then this guy, he's just sunbathing there. I think he's got a boombox. And he's just relaxing. There was, at that time when I was there was a few other people who are hikers, and they were looking at maps and kind of just trying to figure out. Actually, I think there's a photo of that in the thing too. There's all these men around a map, and they're just trying to figure out where they are in relation to some of the signage there. But I don't know. It just fills me with the sense of like, I don't know, absurdity and gorgeousness and amazement and all of these things at the same time. It amazes me that of all, I mean, he could be sunbathing at any other spot, but he really chose this spot right in front of the cross. I just want to tell you one other thing about this specific spot and trip.
Sure.
The reason I was there was because a friend of mine, I was talking to a friend of mine and I was telling him that I was coming for a visit. And he said, you know, I'm part of this church group and we do an annual men's retreat in the mountains. And it's just like a 3-day trip. And, we just sort of go there camping style, like there's no, you're just sort of living in tents. And he asked me if I was interested in joining him. And so that shows up in some of the other photos. There's like, it's basically this retreat that happens in a remote mountain range. It's not that remote also. Like, I mean, nothing in Ukraine is really that remote. It's not like, but anyway, so it was an amazing kind of way to also relate to the place and to spend time there and just to kind of plug myself into a community of people that are on a specific trip and contemplation. And it was really that. It was just like hiking to different spots, different mountaintops, and they would be praying. And then I don't think this cross is part of that, I suppose it might be, but I really don't think so. But anyway, so this was like the reason I ended up being there, was this, like, just had this opportunity to spend time in a very unusual way with a friend of mine. And also my father joined me at the time too. And within this group of men, you just run into all these other kind of intersection of people who are either hikers and shepherds who are living in the area somewhere. It was kind of unbelievable.
So you shoot on film. Did you want to talk at all about your decision to shoot on film?
The main thing I like about it is that when I bring a digital camera, I come back with like thousands of photos, and it's overwhelming. And with film camera, you can just bring 3-4 rolls that are 36 exposures max, and I like the limitation of it, and it's just like that's all you have. And I like not knowing, and what it allows me to do is like take a snapshot and move on and be present and do other things. But I think if I had like a digital camera, I'm constantly reviewing that I get the right angle, that is the exposure right, and it's just like, and so my time is being spent with the camera more than where I'm at. And I just find like with film cameras, it's faster. That's pretty much the only reason. I love the look of film, of course, but it's not a thing that drives me at all. Like I do love it. And I love like the texture you get from it. The color spaces are also like super amazing. Yeah. I just feel overwhelmed with digital cameras because I take too many photos, and it's hard to manage.
Another thing I wanted to ask while we're talking about this series of work is there's one called like affordable housing.
That's from Lviv.
And I just wanted to ask about, first of all, is there a story to that photo? And kind of another thing was like how people react to you, because it looks like there's an interaction happening here. And when you're photographing in Ukraine, like, are people excited about it? Are people resistant to it? Like what's that relationship like?
In this case, yeah, he was not happy with me. What happened was he is moving his car, and I'm on the sidewalk with a lot of people. And basically everyone was watching him, and I think he started feeling uncomfortable because he felt a bit embarrassed that his car broke down.
Oh,
And he told me to basically go fuck myself with my camera.
wow.
Can't I see that he's trying to get out of, and it's like a center city Lviv almost, like it's there's lots of cars and just things going on. And so yeah, he was yelling at me, but as much as I was paying attention to him, I was also paying attention, like what caught my eye and what I focused on was the advertising on that bus, which says, which I need kind of call the photo, which is Dostupne житло Европейского рівня. So accessible housing at European level, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this almost, I don't know if it's right or what, but to me, this also ties into this kind of kitsch idea of that you see in Ukraine. I mean, I just found that wording to be so indicative of everything in the sense, like just of what, what people are kind of looking to, orienting to, and just the way these, just this combination of words like, European level accessible living or housing or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah. So just all these things were happening at the same time in that moment. And I kind of, he was very angry. He was a very angry person. But to actually, it's an interesting question that you're raising, like how do people react? And I was very surprised actually. People are super confrontational, and they're very suspicious. And the reason being is because like on two occasions, I was confronted by someone, and when I explained myself, their reaction was like, well, look, I'm sorry, but I just thought you might be a terrorist. Wow. And so the idea is like, everyone's really suspicious because like, there is a war going on, and you can't, people are kind of mistrustful and not sure what the intentions are. It's not to say like they maybe suspect the intentions are, violent or anything, but why is someone capturing images? But then they're also relaxed because they see it's just like a film camera, and then they kind of think maybe I'm not all there using a film camera. That's also my response. Like, why would you do that? Have you not heard of megapixels?
Right.
And like, what are you going to do with this film now? Like, how are you even going to look at it? So there's that also. But yeah, there's been a couple of occasions where people are really confronting me with this sense of potentially I'm some kind of agent or. And then, in Tue-Thu that happened. In Tue-Thu, actually, I approached people because it was a school, and I kind of explained myself right away. But they also didn't even want to almost hear about it. They were like, yeah, okay, I get it, but we're still suspicious. So yeah, I would say there's at least in my experience, there's been some degree of suspicion. Kind of related to that, a couple of years ago, I was in Kyiv, and I was working as like a translator for a documentary. And we were filming not too far. Well, we were filming like in the area where there's like all these embassies and the government houses and stuff. And I just didn't think twice. You just don't. Anyway, we were chased by like a Secret Service person who like presented himself and was like, what are you guys doing here? Don't you know this is a something zone, like it's off limits to cameras. I want your names, I want your passports. And we were like, we're in Canada, don't worry.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a suspicion, and it's like in some ways it's not just some ways, it's completely valid. There's the country's going through an insane situation that's like just incomprehensible.
Maybe,
Well, with this guy, actually, with the Secret Service person, he asked to photograph our passports, and when we refused, he looked at us like he couldn't believe it.
wow.
He just couldn't believe. He's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm just like, "I'm not letting you photograph." I mean, he's like, "What?" And he didn't understand why. I mean, he looked like he didn't understand. Maybe I'm misinterpreting or projecting or something. But he looked confused that we resisted this demand, and we're like, absolutely, no, we're not letting you. So it was, and he had to make phone calls, and like someone basically told him to drop it. And he was like, all right, go, but don't film.
Another thing I wanted to just talk about briefly, we're kind of getting closer to the end. Like, when did you come to Canada? And like, do you have family in Ukraine? Is that primarily why you visit? Or
Yeah.
What's the relationship there?
So I came in 1987. I moved to Canada with my mom, and I come from a really big family, and my father stayed there, and my father remarried and had a son. So like my brother, and he lived there, and so I have this, growing up here, I had this like pretty intense connection to Ukraine because of the family was mostly there. So and then also like my mom remarried here and in Canada, and also had kids, and so I grew up here with my sisters, and then it's just this like kind of duality, you have like these two realities constantly in your brain, and it's like I find that like with some friends of mine who have come from Ukraine, who came like fully as families, they have had an easier time, or not an easier time, but just like almost a better time of just cutting off their past, and just they didn't have to think about it because they're here with their family. But I guess that for me was a little bit different. You're constantly reminded of the place you're from for so many reasons, and it sort of developed a kind of, I guess, just like an intense relationship that I've always felt and had. And so I do go back primarily to visit family, and I always kind of eke out time for myself and just to experience the space and the place and everything that comes into that.
Okay. So my last question, I just wanted to ask, what's next for you creatively, no matter how big or small, just what you're excited to work on next?
Well, the thing that I'm like in the middle of right now is actually pre-production for a short film. And it's kind of Ukrainian themed, but it's about the diaspora in Canada, and it's probably drawing from my kind of experiences of experiencing Ukrainian community life that in like, in these sort of cultural centers and the church basements and stuff like this. And so it's a story basically that is touching on kind of generational divides and in relation also to, I guess, what everyone that is of Ukrainian heritage has this link to Ukraine, and it's kind of explores these themes. Right now, like I said, I'm in pre-production, starting casting. So looking for people from different age groups. We'll be shooting most likely in Montreal or Toronto. It's like there's a couple of spaces I have my eye on, and but yeah, that's sort of ideally we will shoot end of June, worst case scenario, August. But of course, COVID is making things just completely, let's just say difficult, complicated. So yeah, that's my next project that I'm working on. And also I do want to, eventually I would love to do this documentary that is in this village which is what Klatka is kind of was filmed there.
Okay.
Those are two kind of main projects on my plate. I would love to see this show somewhere else too. And I don't know how that, whatever, but yeah. So yeah, I guess right now it's like stuff that is really, really related to Ukrainian things. I wanted to share this photo also. So this is in this town called Tue-Thu, which is like maybe population of 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing here that's happening is they're burning the grass. And when I saw this place and I started talking to the people working there, my first question is like, why they're doing it. And I was really surprised. Basically, when I was at this point, that summer in particular, there was just an unbelievable drought. I think it's called drought. Is that the right way to say it? Drought. It basically didn't rain for weeks and weeks on end, and it was like 40 degrees every day.
Wow.
And what's interesting about that is this, like, some of the villages, even in this area, but definitely a lot in the south and more like, I think around like, I'm not sure how much south of this, but I had the impression of like the Odessa area. What was happening was most villages kind of rely on wells for water, and the wells were drying up. And so we're entering this kind of situation, like where water scarcity is a reality. And I think it's going to be a major issue in Ukraine in the future. This was, I think, basically the last week of August, and they were preparing to open for school on September 1st. And they wanted to mow the grass. And of course, the way that they would be mowing grass here in this particular place is like with, what is that called? Like the wooden thing with it's not a scythe because it's like a law,
Like a sickle?
Yeah, but a sickle, isn't it like a handheld thing? This is like a long thing.
Scythe. Yeah, it's a scythe.
Okay. So, you
like a Grim Reaper.
Yeah, like what the Grim Reaper has.
Yeah.
So I was asking him, like, why doesn't he just do that? Why are they burning it? And he said that because of the drought, the grass has gotten so hard that it doesn't cut. It's too difficult.
Wow.
So they decided just to burn the fields, but then there's all these kids playing in these burning fields. And it was like, I mean, it just made for, well, let's just say like impressions abound in this situation. It was amazing. But the roads there are comically terrible. I think, I'm not sure if it was on this trip, but at some point in protest in the town not too far from here, people started planting flowers in the potholes, and they were so big that the flower they really would grow and just be like,
wow.
It would show like how little maintenance is done, and just interacting with the people there, it was really super interesting. These were like, some of them were, workers who are, what do you call it? Just like caretakers, but some of them were teachers who were washing the windows of the school and just really preparing it.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. And again, thank you, Vitalyi, for bringing your artwork to Edmonton, to ACUA, to the Alberta Council for the Ukrainian Arts.
Thanks to you guys.
Yeah, no problem. Brief Encounters with Vitalyi Bulychev and Larysa Luciw is on at ACUA until I think May 28th. Thanks, Vitalyi.
Thank you.
Welcome, and we're here with Larysa Luciw, who is a photographer, and she's showing with Vitalyi Bulychev in Brief Encounters, or КОРОТКІ ЗУСТРІЧІ, which is on at ACUA until the end of May. I'm just here to ask Larysa a few questions about her work. I'm Boris Tarasenko, Program Assistant here at ACUA. Welcome, Larysa, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So first question, basically, I just wanted to ask what you do and how you got into it and maybe why you do it creatively. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm a teacher by trade. I teach grade 1 in North Edmonton. But there was one day that is during summer holidays, probably about, 10 years ago, that I was bored sitting on my couch and decided to go shopping. And I went to Best Buy and I saw a camera on sale and I bought the camera as like just a whim purchase, bored one day. And at that point, I used to go travel to like East Central Alberta. I'd just take my car and I would just drive down range roads and township roads and just like explore different areas and look at the old houses, the old barns. So then now that I had my camera, I was doing that more often and I was going and taking pictures of old abandoned buildings, like I said, barns, granaries, houses, landscapes, things like that. And then my sister had babies. And then I started taking pictures of the girls. And then it kind of became a hobby for me. And then I ended up doing photography on the side. So, and I still do. So like family portraits, individual portraits, babies, newborn, cake smashes, anything. So it's kind of like a part-time job that I have. But then also, of course, it's a nice way to be creative. And I've just been really just trying to hone in on my camera skills. And sometimes that just means having a camera with me every day in the car. And if I see something on my travels, on my walks in the river valley, when I'm visiting somebody, I'll take a picture of it and then I play with the editing. And that's kind of what's gotten me here. I did another project in 2017 called I Am Ukrainian Canadian, where I took pictures of people who shared their Ukrainian immigration stories. And so that was a little project. And now I'm the show I have at ACUA right now are just pictures of things that I have just, like I said, seen in my everyday life as I travel, as I go for walks in the river valley, as I'm walking at home. Yeah. That's it. So it's mostly around like the Alberta area. It's not, I guess I didn't really have anything specific in mind when I took those photos, but those are the photos that I just felt they just meant something to me. They appealed to me, and that's why I chose them for the show.
When you were setting up, you were telling me about the outlet that you photographed.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of opportunities, I don't know, do you have any stories to tell or even about that piece or something else in the exhibition?
Well, the owlet, for example, this is the great horned owl. I was told by a friend that I'm obsessed with owls to begin with. Like I love owls. I see owls often. And my friend had told me that she went for a walk in, I think it was Rundle Park. I think that one's in Rundle. And she says, there's owls there. She goes, there's a nest, there's baby owls. And I've never seen a baby owl before. So of course I went and I'd go every day trying to find them, and I found them. And then they were at that point, he doesn't look like he's very old, that he's old enough to fly, but he can fly, or that he could fly at that point because he was far from the nest. And I was happening to just walk by the pond, and I saw this little like grayish thing in a tree. And I guess if you were standing on the ground, he would be quite high up. But what he didn't realize is there's a path on the side, which actually made him eye level to where I was standing. And because I was looking for him, I saw him. Some people might have not seen him. They would have just walked by, but I saw him and he just stared at me and I just stared at him and I took a couple of shots of him. So, but that was just like being in Rundle Park and, just hearing that there was owls there and just going for a walk and then finding him. So it was kind of a lucky image. Another one of the images there that I have in the show is Chickadee, which we see all the time. And he was eating at the feeders in my house, but then my neighbors, they have a window with a black curtain. And he just happened to be on this one little stump. And if I just moved a certain way, then I was able to get the black window in the background. So it kind of created a really nice backdrop where it's just the chickadee with a couple of branches. And I just thought it was really beautiful. And when I edited the image, I tried to make it a little bit more of a, like a fine art image, as opposed to just a photograph. So I could put different layers of textures on there. I played with light a little bit. So that's how that one came about.
Yeah, it's got a nice backdrop. It almost looks like it's shot in a studio, which is kind of
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so one thing I asked everybody is basically just to finish off, is what are you excited about next creatively? Like, do you have a project coming up? Is there something you're excited to make, no matter how big or small? Or are you like not in the mood to make stuff at all? Like, is it time to take a break? Because everyone has cycles, right?
right.
So yeah, if there's anything you want to talk about, go for it.
Well, I guess for me right now, an area that I'm really passionate about and that I'm starting to explore is more the fine art photography in terms of portraiture. So taking photos in studio, so with like with a strobe light, playing with light, with the feathering of light, playing with the reflection of light, and then just editing my images to make them look more fine art. So that means having control of the whole shoot. So bringing in the outfits, bringing in the ideas, everything. So I'm controlling the whole shoot, because, you know, sometimes you do family photos, or you do photo shoots for people, but they come in their own outfits, and it's not really, you're not being as creative. Like, they'll come in, the kids will come in with an Elsa outfit or something like that. But these ones here are more my vision. And I'm kind of going more of like an antique-y theme, like a vintage kind of a theme, really simple, where the person is the main component of the image. No real backdrop, some props if I feel they're appropriate. But yeah, just really honing in on that fine art photography and just the editing. So sometimes, you know, an image will take me an hour and a half to edit, because maybe I'll go back forth to like add more light to certain areas and stuff. So that's kind of an area where I'm really working on right now, and I'm really passionate about.
All right. Well, that's all for today. Thanks, Larysa, for being with us today, and congrats on the beautiful showing.
Thank
Brief
you.
Encounters, or КОРОТКІ ЗУСТРІЧІ, is on at ACUA until the end of May. And we have an online catalog that's already online on our Facebook page, and you can also access it through other means as well. So
Awesome.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.